Let's look at how we can add interactivity to our project by using ActionScript to allow users to navigate through our application using buttons. So here we have our Sagress example here, and let's take a quick look at the scenes. And you'll notice that I have a welcome scene, a gallery, a simple presentation where the bottle just slides in and out. And then I also have this interactive scene, which is where I might have some potential interactivity for my users. And what I've got here is I've got some Sagress gallery text, I've got some text up here, and then I've got a bottle in the middle. And what I'd like to do is convert each of these pieces of text and the bottle into buttons that allow me to navigate to different portions of this project. So initially what I'll do is I'll just start with the gallery option, and I'll just grab my Sagress gallery text, and the first thing I need to do is go up to my modify menu, and I need to convert this to a symbol. And once I've got this, I want to make sure that I've got the type set to button, and for the name, and remember this is the symbol name, not the instance name, I'm going to call this gallery. At this point, this is being converted into a symbol. If I look at my library, we can see that we've got the gallery button here. And what I can do now is just double click this button, and it's hard to see because it's on a white background, but the important thing to note are the states that we've got here, the up, over, down, and hit. And these are essentially just the different states of our button. What does it look like when nothing is happening, when the user's not interacting with it? That's the up state. The over state is what happens to the graphic when the user hovers over the button. The down state is when the user clicks on the button, and the hit state is actually the hit area. So how big this button is as far as when the user hovers their mouse near it. When does it actually start to allow the users to interact with it? So what we could do is we could add additional states to this, but this video is more about the scripting portion, so I'm going to actually come back to the welcome screen and leave this button with just basic interactivity. And from here what I'm going to do is actually go to the properties of this instance, because remember this isn't the button itself, this is an instance or a copy of that button, and I'm going to give it an instance name. So I'm going to call this gallery button, and then what I think I'll do is actually add some interactivity to this. So what I need to do is actually add some ActionScript to this. So what I can do is go to my window menu, and I'll come down to actions, just resize this, and currently there's nothing here, and that's because we haven't actually added any ActionScript to our scene. So let me just push this off to the side. We could manually add in our ActionScript to the first frame in this welcome scene, but I'm going to show you an easier way to get started on this so you don't have to remember everything from scratch each time. So I'm going to go to my window menu, and I'm going to go to code snippets, and this has some a simple set of pre-existing code, ActionScript code that we can use to get us started when adding simple interactivity. And if we look at the timeline and navigation, we've got a bunch of click to go to options, and what we might be interested in is this one at the bottom, click to go to scene and play. So let's double click this, and when I do that and look back at my actions here, you'll notice that on frame 1, if I scroll up here, we've got a new actions layer that's been created with a little A symbol. That tells me that I've got some ActionScript on this keyframe, and we can see that the ActionScript has been applied to gallery button, the instance of the button that I had selected when I ran that code snippet. And so we're adding an event listener here, and that essentially means we're going to listen for interactivity with this button symbol. And the event listener that we're adding in is a mouse click, because obviously we want our users to be able to click on this button. And then we have this function name here, click to go to scene. Now what that does is when this instance is clicked, Flash runs a function called click to go to scene. So let's look at the function that's being created here. That's this function here. Remember, it only gets run when the user clicks on the button. So we listen for the event, which is a mouse click, and what we say is go to and play scene 3. Now we've got some nice instructions written at the top of the coding here, and what they're saying is you need to replace scene 3 with the name of the scene that you'd like to play. And then it says replace 1 with the frame number you would like the movie clip to play from. So we've got some defaults set up here. So let's move this out the way for a second. We want to go to this is our gallery button, so we want to go to the gallery scene when the user clicks on this. So we've got to remember that it's capital G, gallery. It's case sensitive, so that's very important. So let's change the scene. Let's come back to our welcomes scene, make sure we're on the actions layer, and we're going to change this to, instead of scene 3, gallery. And we do want it to play from frame 1, so we can just leave that as is. Let's close this down and let's test this now. So I'm going to do Control Enter, and we'll see that it's not quite working as planned. In fact, what it's actually doing is it's quickly scrolling through all of my scenes, one after the other, one after the other. So let me close this down. So by default, Flash simply plays through the scenes in order: welcome, gallery, presentation, interactive. So what we can actually do is force Flash to stop when it hits the welcome scene. So let's go back into the action script here, right click, actions, and I'm going to delete these instructions because I don't need them anymore. And what I will do is put in a comment that tells me what I'm going to be doing next. So I'm going to stop timeline playback. And to do that, I'm simply going to issue the command stop, like that, with a semicolon at the end. Now let's test the scene again. So, Control Enter, and you can see that Flash correctly stops on my welcome screen. And if I hover over the Sargeant gallery button now, you can see that it's actually become interactive. You can see that because my mouse pointer changes. And if I click on that, it continues through the rest of the presentation. The problem that we're seeing though is that we've got an issue that it's just playing, it's going to the next scene, and then it's just playing through them one after the other again. So a good rule of thumb is to actually force specific scenes that have no animation to stop by default. So if I look at my gallery scene, that shouldn't just play, that should sit and wait for user interaction. So I'm going to add a new layer at the top of my gallery scene, and I'm going to call this Actions. And then what I'll do is I'll select the first empty keyframe, right click, and bring up my Actions palette, which is already open here. Actions, frame 1. That's the layer, and that's the frame. And I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to type stop, brackets, semicolon. So I'm actually writing some pre-existing action script which forces the timeline to stop. My presentation scene should play by default. It should play through and get to the end. But what happens when it gets to the end? Well, we'll deal with that later. Lastly, let's look at my interactive scene. This one should sit and wait for user interaction. So I'll add a new layer again, call it Actions, bring up my Actions palette, and again just type stop. So let's preview this, Control Enter, click on Sargeant Gallery, and now we come to that next gallery scene and stop and wait for user interaction. So that's working correctly. And what I could do then is add buttons for my interactive component and for my presentation. But let's take a look at the gallery scene, and we have one more button here, which is menu, and that takes the user back to the main menu. So what I'll do is the same process that I did for the welcome screen. I'm just going to select the menu, text, modify, convert to symbol, and we'll call this menu button. Make sure the type is set to button, click OK. And then on my gallery, I've got this actions layer. Let's open this up. Actions. We've got that stop that we put in previously. However, I don't want to type the action script for my menu button. I could type it from scratch, but again I'm going to use code snippets. So I'll select the menu button, go to my code snippets, again double click to go to scene and play, and it says, oh, I forgot to give it an instance name, so let me cancel this. So each button in Flash has to have that instance name, so we'll select menu, we'll give it a name, menu button, and we'll try that one more time. Code snippets, click to go to scene and play. If you didn't give it an instance name, Flash would give it something generic, but that can make it a little confusing later on. So let's take a look. And what Flash has done is it's used my existing actions layer. It's still got my stop command up there, but it's added the extra code in. And to the menu button, we've added an event listener. And click to go to scene 2. It's given it a different function name because it has a different purpose. And again, we need to update the code. So we want to go to the welcome scene, so I'm going to type that, and we want to go to and play frame 1. So let's close that, let's test it. We've got the main welcome screen, we click on the gallery button, takes us to the gallery, and now we have this menu button. If we click on that, it takes us back to the welcome screen. So it's really easy to add interactivity into your projects just using those code snippets. It's just a question of knowing how to edit them and update them. Let's come back to the presentation here, which has that animated bottle sliding through. And what I think I'll do is I'll just go back to my welcome screen, and I'm going to quickly turn my text into a button. So I'm going to go to modify, convert to symbol, and call this presentation button. And again, give that instance an instance name, so we'll call this presentation button. And then what I'll do is I'm going to add some code. Again, go to scene and play, and I'm going to tell it to go to my presentation scene. And we'll test it. And click the presentation. It plays the presentation, but what happens next? It goes to the next scene because we haven't put a stop command in there. So we have a choice. One way we could do this is to go to the presentation scene, and we could simply put a little line of action script on the very last frame telling the timeline to stop. So let's try that. New layer, actions, go to the very last frame. I'm going to add an empty keyframe, so right click, insert blank keyframe, right click on that blank keyframe, actions, and use that familiar stop command again. And if we test it, play the presentation, it plays through and stops. And so at that point we could just update our menu button to take the user back to the welcome screen. There's another way to do this though. We could use a different piece of action script. So let's try deleting this stop command, and let's look at our code snippets to see what we have. And we can see we've got these various useful snippets we could use, but they're all click to go to. I'm not really interested in the clickable portion. I really just want the go to scene and play. So if I were to try and apply this, Flash would want me to apply it to a button, but I would like to know how to go to a scene and play. So let's actually right click on the code snippet. I'm just going to copy it to the clipboard and take a look at it. Let's load up my copy of Notepad and paste this in. This is really the only bit that I'm interested in. I don't really need to have the clickable portion. I just need this command, movie clip, go to and play, and then the scene I need. That's really all I need. So I'm going to just copy this and load up my actions panel for this final frame where I previously put the stop in. And instead of typing stop, I'm going to paste in this command here, movie clip, this dot root, go to and play. I want to go back to my welcome screen. And so now, when this presentation is played through, it's automatically going to go back to that welcome screen. Let's test it. So we'll click to play the presentation, gets to the end, and hits the welcome screen, which has a stop command at the beginning of its timeline. So we're essentially right back where we started, and we can continue to interact with this, and the user can then drive the presentation in the order that they want. So that's how we can use simple code snippets to add basic interactivity to our scenes to allow our users to navigate back and forth between each of our different scenes. Thanks for watching.